And let's go to Marwan Bishara, Al Jazeera senior political analyst. He joins us from Paris. Marwan, it's difficult to even know where to start. So I'm just going to ask you what you make of these latest strikes by Israel on Syria, the timing and the motivation.
Well, certainly it's a vulgar exhibitionism on the part of Israel. Generally speaking, you would say this is Israel once again trying to prove to all its neighbors that it is the new regional hegemon, that it is the one that is, as Noor put it in her words, calling the shots in the Middle East. Supported by the United States, was able to bomb Beirut, Damascus, Tehran, Sana'a, and others. It feels now at this point in time that it is capable of dictating policy in the Middle East. In Syria in particular, it has been trying to dictate to the new government in Syria where and how to deploy its forces and why it shouldn't be deploying anything south of the capital without basically Israeli permission. At the same time, short of that, and right before Trump met with Bishara in Riyadh, Israel really main goal has been to divide and weaken Syria, turn its minorities, whether they are Druze or Kurds or Alawites, against the central government in Damascus. And last but not least, there's, of course, the usual Israeli attempts at deflecting away from its genocide in Gaza by bombing and by saying it's going to be bombing for a good number of days, preparing for a wider campaign in Syria. You know, here we are, we're all busy with yet another Israeli aggression in a neighboring country. Of course, the Israelis, it bears saying, they're doing it to protect the minorities in Syria, in this case, the Druze. They have been carrying that lie now for 70 years. Since the 1950s, Israel has pretended to be the protector of minorities, like the French colonialists were, like the American imperialists were, the British, you know, every foreign power comes to the region and they want to be protectors of minorities in order to weaken countries in the region in order to impose their will. And here we have it again happening in Syria.
Marwan, as you just mentioned, the United States and many of Syria's neighbors have backed al-Shara and his new government. How do you expect them to react to these latest attacks?
I think probably like they reacted to the genocide in Gaza, right? There'll be rhetorical condemnation. There will be surprise and shock. There will be even depression, but the impotence will take over. The division among the Arabs will take over, unless they will pleasantly surprise, their citizens and really do something more serious. Will the Egyptian government remain silent as it was, or remain silent? And I'm talking about actions, not words. When it came, for example, to the genocide in Gaza. Will the Arab regimes be okay with yet another capital being bombed, the Umayyad, as it were, in square in the middle of Damascus? Would they worry that it's their capital that might be next if Israel decides that it is indeed the hegemon and is going to be teaching everyone a lesson? My fear is that the Arab regimes, unlike the Arab states, have been going from bad to worse, whether on the question of Gaza, Palestine, or on the question of Syria. They talk the talk, but they never walk it.
Marwan, I want to just bring to you one of the latest lines that we've been hearing from Damascus, that the Syrian Druze religious leader says they have reached an agreement with the Syrian government to fully integrate the southern region of al-Suwaida within the Syrian state. And when we were speaking to our correspondent Zaina Khoda, she said that this involved the Syrian forces remaining in the south. We know that's something Israel says it doesn't want. What do you make of these latest developments? And what is Israel's next move, do you think?
Well, in principle, of course, it's a very good thing. for the Druze in the southern part of Syria to agree first, and to agree to be part and parcel of the Syrian state second, and to accept the centralized government. The most important thing about those sorts of things, and just to generalize it for our viewers around the world who are not familiar with Syrian geography and ethnicities, is simply to say that for most minorities in most states in the world, what's important is that even if they are against a certain government, a certain ideology, a certain regime, that they still remain part and parcel of the state. That for them, the state is above any government, above any regime, and do not allow a foreign, let alone a colonial power, to interfere in the domestic affairs by bombing the hell out of their country. And I think most Druze in southern Syria want to be part and parcel of the Syrian state. Some of them might not agree with the central government, the new government, but they certainly want to work with it. A little minority are but troublemakers. They are being exploited by Israel. They've been convinced that perhaps they could revive the idea of a Druze state in the southern part of Syria. Be that as it may, Israel continues to exploit the differences within the country as it tried to exploit the differences with the Kurdish minority in the north. So if they did arrive at a deal, that's a good news. But of course, we have to approach it with skepticism because they've just reached one 2 days ago.
Right. Marwan, again, for the sake of our audience who may not be familiar, to what extent has Israel previously intervened in Syria under the pretext of defending minority groups like the Druze?
Well, certainly they've been doing that since March, and in terms of in Syria and in the region in general, one of the doctrines of Israel since the 1950s, and it's actually a written thing, it's not analytical on my part, is that they wanted to reach out to and connect with various minorities within the Middle East and connect with non-Arabs within the Middle East. Of course, the Druze are Arabs, but for example, the Kurds and others, they thought, even Persians and so on and so forth. So Israel's idea of weakening the Arab states surrounding it through minorities and through non-Arab countries has been a doctrine in Israel since the 1950s. And it is in that sense that a colonial implant, as it's viewed in the Arab world, continues nonstop to divide its neighbors in order to be the more powerful one. And in fact, it succeeded, one must admit, that in the past year or so, by destroying much of Iran's defenses, by destroying much of Hezbollah's capabilities, by attacking and destroying much of Syria's military capability, by continuously bombing Yemen, they have been trying to establish themselves as hegemon. And not just any hegemon, they're trying to replace the United States as the Middle East hegemon. That's why, and I'm just going to go up in a limb now and say, some of those, pro-Israel voices in Washington are shocked because what is Netanyahu doing exactly? I mean, didn't Trump shake, the Syrian president's hands in Riyadh and called him a handsome man? So why is Israel attacking the Syrian capital and attacking even the presidential palace without apparently clearing it with Washington? So the Netanyahu government clearly has gone off the ramp with its arrogance, and clearly, and really this is the most important thing of all for the long term for us as media, to state that international law dies in Israel every single day. International law dies in Israel every single day.
Marwan, one of the things to mention is when it comes to the Druze community, they're very much an integral part of the region. Across the region, we have Druze in Syria that we've been talking about in the south. We have Druze in Jordan. We have Druze also in Israel. How do you think the Israeli public is viewing the government's explanation for the strikes on Syria. Is the Druze community in Israel supportive of this move?
Okay, so briefly, in a few seconds, to summarize 10 centuries of history, they did belong to this part of the Near East for the past 1,000 years or so. And they are their presence is within, as you said, Palestine, historical Syria, basically, Palestine, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon. And generally speaking, they have had different positions, different fights since they fought the Crusades up to the early 1920s when they fought the French. But they also, when they became part of Israel, they made, a Faustian deal, if you will, with the Israeli government, and they began to serve in the Israeli army. But the Druze in Lebanon, for example, have been part and parcel. In fact, they were leaders of the Arab nationalist progressive movement in Lebanon, and that's why they were targeted by Israel. And in fact, up until a few weeks ago, Walid Jumblat, who is sort of the leader of the Druze in Lebanon, have continuously warned his fellow Druze in Syria not to fall the trap of Israel, as Kurds fell to the trap of Americans and Israelis, by avoiding any such contacts with Israel or any such accommodation for Israel in Syria, in order to be part and parcel of the Syrian state, like the Druze in Lebanon are part and parcel of the Lebanese state. So while the Druze are not monolith, but there is a predominant trend within the within the Druze communities in the Near East that has been anti-colonial, anti-foreign powers, and certainly been sort of nationalistic in the parts of in Syria and Lebanon and other places.
Okay, Marwan. A very complicated history. Thank you for breaking that down for us. Marwan Bishara, Al Jazeera senior political analyst there for us in Paris.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.